But I can't be mad because I did the same thing to Mick. It was times where I would sneak over and just pull this out and try to put it back before she noticed it was gone. Child, one time she noticed it was gone. I thought she was going to black my eye. Was stirred by the music and moved by the spirit. Once I closed my eyes, it felt like a dream. It was as if I really wasn't out there in front of the young adult choir at all. I was back in front of my bedroom mirror singing into my broomstick. I was Dinah, and I was Sarah, and I was Nina, all rolled into one. Halfway through the song, I was no longer just singing. I was chanting. I was incanting. I was crying. I was testifying, laying back on the notes until the song was no longer a song, but a sanctified call to God. And I was no longer a teenage girl singing in a church choir, but a messenger of the Lord singing on the front steps of heaven. What I say? The best singers in the world sing for the Lord. Even people from other churches started coming. It didn't matter what you were the rest of the month, Presbyterian, Catholic, or the Holy Roller. Come second Sunday, you were Baptist, and you were sitting in Beulah. Lots of our neighbors were among the converted, like the family of my dear friend, George Peters, who were devoted members of Elmwood Methodist, but who would come to Beulah to hear me sing. I was a late bloomer, and it was at John Batram High School that I started to come into my own. In the late 50s and early 60s, the Philadelphia public schools were full of talented kids who would go on to fame and fortune. Earl the Pearl Monroe, who was at Batram with me, would become a sports icon for his silky smooth moves on the basketball court. Kenny Gamble, who was at West Philly High, would become a music legend for his silky smooth sounds in the recording studio. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine Kenny would wind up being a multi-Grammy award-winning producer. Not little Kenny Gamble, who used to sneak beers for me to drink with him in the alley behind my house. It was Kenny, along with Leon Huff, who would shape the sound of Philadelphia, producing artists like Jerry Butler, The Intruders, Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, the OJs, Teddy Pendergrass, and one day, me. Back then, none of us had a clue what the future might hold, least of all me. For a teenage girl, the future is Saturday night, and there were plenty of other things to think about at the moment. Pretty clothes, cute boys, cool cars. Because of my singing, I had become popular. And my newfound popularity gave me confidence. With my girlfriends by my side, I found myself doing things I never could have done on my own, like going to parties and staying out all night. Of course, I was probably more image conscious than anybody I knew, like my sister's Claudette, that's her best friend, didn't have to think twice about her looks. She was beautiful. Not only was I not in her league, I felt I had to overcome so much just to get up to average. Girl, me too. Okay, that's what I felt. That's where Vivian, the Countess of Cool, came in. She had the baddest drag in town. So bad, I thought her clothes could even make me look good. So I took my life in my own hands. Yes, ma'am. Let me tell you what she would do. I'm telling you, being the oldest sister, the younger ones be trying it. And when I think about it, I probably should have done this. Because it's things that I allowed my little sister to wear, and there were things that I was like, you bet not, absolutely dare even in your wildest dream touch this. Don't do it. I didn't mind allowing my sister to borrow certain items in my wardrobe, but there were certain things that you better never touch. And my sister sometimes touched them. But I can't be mad because I did the same thing to Mick. It was times where I would sneak over and just pull this out and try to put it back before she noticed it was gone. Child, one time she noticed it was gone. I thought she was going to black my eye. But what Patti would do, what Patti would do is go down to her sister's car and get into the trunk, okay? But child, in her mind, and in mine too, I felt that whatever my shortcomings were, I could make it up with fashion and designer clothes. I spent 20 years of my life wearing designer items, not realizing, girl, you don't even go nowhere. And all the heels I bought, I'm like, why did you even buy them heels, Nate? You know damn well you don't wear no fucking high heels. I don't even wear kitten heels. I don't wear heels, honey. I stopped that shit years ago. Getting back to Patti LaBelle, okay? She snuck down to her sister's car, got into the trunk, and stole her sister's clothes. Sticky fingers. Patti LaBelle sticky fingers. I broke into Vivian's trunk, the one where she kept her prettiest pieces locked away from her younger sisters. You have never in your life seen such fabulous clothes. Cashmere sweaters, butter soft leather bags and belts. Melt on your skin Italian silk shirts. I just couldn't help myself. I would pick the lock and take my pick. I'd always make sure to sneak them back in the trunk before she got home from work. I thought Vivian would never know the difference. What I didn't know was how to fold them as perfectly as she did. Eventually, I got busted. Vivian beat my butt all through the house. But you know what? Those clothes were so beautiful, they were worth every bruise. I wonder if my sister feel that way. Because it seemed like every time I go over her house, I find a piece of my clothing. How long has this shit been here? What I didn't realize is that there are deeper things than physical beauty that make you attractive to people. Long-lasting things. Things that aren't painted on your face or buttoned up your back. Things like warmth, kindness, generosity, compassion. Things like the way you laugh, the way you love, the way you live your life. Those things, not the eyeliner and the cashmere sweater, were the things that were winning me friends and eventually boyfriends. Word. I didn't know that. I think people were trying to explain it to me when I was younger, but I didn't absorb it. I didn't understand that. I understand it now, but then I didn't know that. At Battram High, I had 2 boyfriends. James Jones was the first. All the girls were crazy about him. For one thing, he was a senior. For another, he was drop dead fine. Somehow we connected, although it wasn't one of those every day is the 4th of July kind of love affairs. At 16, love is so much simpler. Eating lunch together in the school cafeteria, walking to class hand in hand, sitting close in Chubby's living room, listening to love songs on the record player. It was warm, wonderful, sweet, and short. When James graduated, our romance ended just like that. Yup. That's how it be when you're young. It be just like that. A few months later, I started dating Richard Glenn, a popular junior who everybody called Bird. Where James was a looker, Bird was a dancer. We used to do the cha-cha and the bop at all the neighborhood parties. It was in the living room of my friend Gertrude's house where I joined my first singing group. Gertrude had to babysit her 2 nieces, and a bunch of us were keeping her company. It was the usual crowd. Marlene Benton, Sally Butler, Brenda James, my sister Barbara, and me. After a few months of performances in the park, we heard about a local talent show that would be held at the Carmen Skating Rink in North Philly. The battle of the groups. We decided to go for it. That was the easy part. The hard part was getting ready for it. Oh my God, when I tell you that this lady showed her ass, when I tell you that Patti LaBelle showed her ever-living arse. At the talent show, everybody wasn't ready but her. Patti LaBelle was mad and embarrassed. And in front of everybody, she started screaming and shouting at her group. From the moment we opened our mouths, we sounded like a train wreck, screeching and clashing. Where were the 5 satins when we really needed them? Barbara was the worst. She was hitting wrong notes all up and down the scale. I don't know about the audience, but I just couldn't take it. In fact, I lost it right there in the rink, in front of hundreds of people. Singing was the one thing in my life that made me special. The one thing that transformed me from shy, awkward Patsy to cool, popular Patti. From an ugly duckling to a swan. And now it seemed as if Barbara was destroying even that. When I heard the crowd start to boo, something inside me snapped. You stupid, no talent singing bitch. I screamed at the top of my lungs. Marlene, Sally, and Brenda just stood there in stunned silence as I kept ranting and raving in a fit of blind rage. They had never seen this side of me before. Neither had I. It seemed to come out of nowhere. This was the night I met Priscilla, the name I have since given to the mean, selfish diva bitch who lives inside of me. But that was only the beginning. Hindsight is always 20/20. Looking back, I realized that I never would have treated a friend the way I treated Barbara that night. But she was my sister, and I knew no matter what I did or said to her, she'd always be my sister. She would always forgive me. It had never occurred to me how deeply I had hurt and humiliated her and embarrassed Chubby in the process. All I cared about was me, my feelings, my ego. Needless to say, that was the first and last performance of the Elm Tones from Elmwood. Unfortunately, that was not the last time I treated Barbara like she was some gum on the bottom of my shoe. It wasn't the last time I would have to think about the lesson I was supposed to learn that night, but I didn't. Had I understood it then, I could have saved myself so much heartache, so many years of guilt and grief. I have come to realize that there really is a high price to fame, but public approval shouldn't come at someone else's expense. You can't lift yourself up by putting other people down, and you will never impress everyone by stepping on anyone. In fact, there really is no need to try to impress people at all. Those who really care about you don't have to be impressed. Those who don't care about you never can be. Everybody loves a star, but that doesn't mean that they love you. It was so much for me to learn in my years at John Batram High School. Somehow I kept missing the point. Chubby tried to tell me, so did Junior, every time he came up from Florida to visit, because her brother Junior is down south with their grandparents on the farm. Over and over again, they would give me the lecture about what was really important in life. It was important for me to study hard. It was important for me to improve my grades. It was important for me to get a good education. They just didn't understand. None of that was important to me. History, geometry, and biology wouldn't help me to make it in the music business. In the early 60s, like so many other urban high schools, Battram High reflected the racial attitudes of the times. Although black kids made up a big chunk of the student population, the teachers' staff was lily white. Worse, it was assumed black students weren't smart enough to keep up with the white kids. Pause. I come from a generation where our grandparents were a part of our lives, okay? And grandparents were, like old ladies. And our grandparents, parents and grandparents and great-grandparents weren't so far removed from slavery, okay? Or the civil rights movement, okay? So, it was important for them, for us to look a certain way, for us to take pride in ourselves, for us to prove to the whites, although we may not have the same privileges as you all, we will at least look and act the part. I can't count the times I have wished I had listened to Chubby's and Junior's lectures back then. If I had it to do over again, I wouldn't have dropped out of high school, especially just one semester shy of graduation. As an adult, not having that diploma did a number on my head many times. Frankly, it often made me feel insecure sometimes, downright inferior. As a teenager, though, I couldn't see that far down the road. Pause. Remember when we read the Respect book? Aretha Franklin did not want people to know that she felt inferior because of her lack of education. As a teenager, though, I couldn't see that far down the road. All I cared about was the moment. And at that moment in my life, all I wanted to do was sing. Music was all around me. It was inside me. Somehow I knew I would make a living on a song. I don't need A's and B's because I'm going to make all of my money singing.
Taking a ride on the east side, made a left on MLK. What a beautiful day, what a beautiful day. Riding high on the west side, looking for a hood rat to play. Won't you come out and play? Won't you come out and play? Hey, taking a ride. Hey, hey, on the south side. Ooh, ooh. Hey, hey, hey.